King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba. Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We have a world food system.
This is Jeffrey Sachs, an American professor of economics, talking about the unspeakable facts about Africa. From their faces, notice how the moderator and the speakers on stage are uncomfortable.
Hey, call me Louis. This is my spot. LuiSpot.
Thank you very much. What we've been hearing is how the system actually works right now. And I want to emphasize we have a world food system.
As you can see, he starts smooth, and at this point, no one, absolutely no one, is really prepared for what is about to come out of Jeffrey's mouth. And that is what makes this clip forever legendary. First, he talks about the world food system. Who really runs the global food agenda?
We have a world food system. It's based on large multinational companies. It's based on private profits. It's based on a very, very low measure of international transfers to help poor people, sometimes none at all. It's based on extreme irresponsibility of powerful countries with regard to the environment. And it's based on a radical denial of rights of poor people, as we just heard. It's interesting, we heard from the Minister of DRC, what's wrong with your country?
Remember when I told you earlier to check their reactions? Well, she's the one that asked the minister earlier what was wrong with Congo. Jeffrey Sachs had to remind her.
What's wrong with your country? Well, we don't even start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago. Not only to the private sector with the US military behind it, with the defense of these property rights in the Minister of Honduras's country, where United Fruit ran the country for a long time. And their attorney was the foreign minister of the United States, Secretary Dulles, and his brother was the head of the CIA and overthrew the next door neighbor, Mr. Arbenz, to make sure that United Fruit could have its property. So we have a system, but we need a different system. And the different system has to be based on principles of human dignity in the Universal Declaration, principles of sovereignty, principles of economic rights, because these are not nice things to do. In 1948, all the government said that food is a right, social protection is a right, not a nice thing, not a pleasant thing, a right. That was 73 years ago. The SDGs are nothing more than our generation's attempt to honor the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we're in a world that's really tough. The private sector's not going to solve this problem. I'm sorry to say to all of the private sector leaders, behave, pay your taxes, follow the rules. That's what you should do.
Jeffrey goes on to prove that he's a better economist by not only criticizing, but also giving 3 solutions to the problem. First, he talks about representation of Africans.
And what the governments should do is the following. They won't, but they should. First, the G20 should become the G21 by inviting systemically the chairperson of the African Union and the African Union to be the 21st country. The European Union is a member of the G20 as the EU. If you add the AU as the 21st for the G21, you add 1.4 billion people to representation at that crucial event. That will change decisively the discussion, because 1.4 billion people are not at the table for finance right now, and they need to be. So my first recommendation is the G21. I love the G20. Add one seat, 1.4 billion people with the AU represented.
Jeffrey then wants the lending capacity of poor countries to be increased at near zero interest.
Second, we need an order of magnitude change of development finance. The rich countries just borrowed $17 trillion for COVID. The poor countries, nothing. Because the rich countries can borrow at zero, and the poor countries pay 5 or 10% coupon rates or have no access at all. So the world exposed its grotesque inequality this past year and a half. Rich countries didn't say, we tighten our belts, why don't you? My country spent $7 trillion of emergency funding, not one penny for anybody else, by the way. $7 trillion, it didn't even cross the imagination of the US Congress to include a few crumbs for the rest of the world. But the poor countries cannot borrow. That's what we should have heard from the World Bank. I didn't hear that from the World Bank. I didn't hear real numbers. Real numbers are in trillions right now because the world economy is 100 trillion a year. But we don't talk about real numbers. But my job, all I know in this world is long division. Divide by 100 trillion and then see whether you're talking about something real or not. So that's the second thing. We need massively to increase the lending and borrowing capacity of poor countries at near zero interest rates like the rich countries have. Then they could get something done.
Finally, he talks about the United Nations at the core of the food system, and not any other superpower country that runs things as they so please.
The final thing is we need the UN as the core and central institution of this world, period. Because this is the only way we're going to have a civilized world, is a strong UN. And it cannot be that the whole UN budget is less than my neighborhood's budget in New York. The UN core budget this year is $3 billion. New York City's budget is $100 billion. And then we say, why don't things work well? Because the rich are hoarding everything.
As a bonus, Jeffrey talks to billionaires.
Final point, rather than our 3 billionaires going in space, well, they could go into space and stay there and leave their money behind. That would be one idea. But another idea is we have 2,775 billionaires on the current list. Their combined net worth, 2,700, is $13.1 trillion. Now, I have it on good authority, you don't need more than $1 billion to be comfortable. But they have an excess of $11 trillion over just the $1 billion. So we should be taxing that and having a civilized world. Thank you.
So, what do you all think about this Jeffrey Sachs presentation? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Otherwise, give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you are new and want more videos like this. Until next time.
Peace out.